Alishah's story did not begin with dances, claps, and broken smiles. It began with a child named Amjad, dragged across the floor by his own father, while his mother's tears stood frozen in silence. I was 9, perhaps 10, when the first crack opened beneath my feet, when the home that should have been a cradle turned into a place of exile. Father's rage came suddenly, like a storm that had been brewing in silence. His hands, rough and merciless, clutched my arm and dragged me across the ground as though I were nothing more than a burden to be discarded. The floor scraped my skin raw, dust stung my throat, and the cries that tore out of me seemed to shatter in the air before they ever reached you. I called for you, Mother, over and over, my voice breaking, but you stood frozen, trapped in a silence heavier than iron. Your eyes, wide with terror, refused to blink, and yet even in that paralysis your tears betrayed you. They slid down your face like small rivers, unwilling witnesses to my undoing. Each drop told me you were breaking with me, that inside you were raging against what Father was doing, but fear held your body captive, sealing your lips and chaining your voice. From that day the beatings became a ritual. When the neighbors whispered, when relatives mocked, when society's gaze grew too sharp, Father's hands or his black leather slipper would find me. Every strike branded me with shame and bruises. I would curl up, small and desperate, then flee to the only sanctuary the house allowed me, the narrow storeroom that smelled of dampness and forgotten objects. That room, Mother, became my temple of sorrow, and when night fell and the rest of the house slept, you would come, your footsteps soft, cautious as though each step betrayed a secret, and then your arms would surround me. You would press me to your chest, as if trying to stitch my broken pieces back together. With your dupatta, you would gently wipe the blood, dab the welts, and when your lips touched my forehead, for a fleeting moment, I felt whole again, but even those nights were laced with grief, your sobs muffled in the hollow dark, tangled with mine until the room itself seemed to breathe sadness. In your lap, I asked questions that weighed heavier than my years. Why me? Why was Father's anger reserved for my skin alone? Why, when guests came, was I locked away with discarded furniture and useless items, hidden as if my existence itself were an embarrassment? Why did God's mercy for our house always mean my own punishment? You never answered, Mother. Silence became your only reply. Yet, in the language of your trembling hands and your quiet kisses, you tried to tell me I was loved. That love, secret, fragile, but real, was my only comfort. Still, comfort cannot stop time. Morning always arrived, pulling you back into the role society demanded, the obedient wife, the silent mother, the woman who feared both her husband and the world's cruel judgment. And I, child who longed only for acceptance, would watch as your eyes avoided mine in daylight. At night you were my shelter, but at dawn I became invisible again. And in that cycle of love and silence, protection and abandonment, I began to understand that even a mother's heart could be shackled by fear. The day Father cast me out of the house is carved into my memory like fire burned into flesh. My only crime was innocence, childish curiosity, the thrill of play, the harmless joy of pretending. I had taken your lipstick from the dressing table and smeared it across my lips, clumsy strokes that made me giggle at my reflection. I draped your bright red dupe across my head, let it fall around my shoulders like a queen's robe. Your glass bangles jingled on my thin wrists, and I slipped into your high-heeled sandals that clicked against the floor with every wobbling step. For the first time, I felt alive, radiant, as if I had discovered a secret self that had been buried deep inside me. It was joy, Mother, pure, untainted joy. But joy is fragile in a house where love is rationed. Father's shadow fell over me before I could hide. His eyes, burning with fury, turned my laughter to ice. Without a word, his slipper came down on me, hard, fast, again and again. Each strike erased the colors I had painted on myself. Lipstick smeared with tears, bangles shattered under his rage, the dupatta ripped from my head. I screamed apologies, begged him to stop, to forgive me, to see me as his child and not as some disgrace, but my cries never softened him. He spat at me, words sharper than his blows, filthy names, curses that told me I was a shame, a burden, a mistake. I clung to his feet in desperation, my small fingers tightening as though I could anchor myself to his love. Father, don't leave me. I will be whatever you want, I cried, but his voice thundered, final and merciless. From today, you are dead to us. That sentence cut deeper than any wound. My grip loosened, my lips, trembling, could no longer form words. Even my tears seemed to dry, knowing nothing I said would change him. And you, mother, you stood there again, the same silence swallowing you, the same tears falling, but no defiance, no hand reaching out to save me. That silence was louder than father's rage. When he dragged me out the door and flung me into the street, the world blurred. Dust clung to my face, my knees burned from the ground, and behind me the door slammed shut like a coffin lid. I pressed my palms against it, knocking, pleading, waiting for you to come and open it, but no sound came from inside. Only my own cries echoed back at me. That was the moment I realized I was no longer a son, no longer a child of that house, no longer worthy of belonging. Father took me to a guru, left me like one leaves an unwanted object at the doorstep of a stranger. "This is where you belong now," he said, and with those words he erased me from his life. From that day forward, I was no longer the boy you held in your lap. I became Alishah, a name given by others, a fate forced upon me. My childhood ended the moment your dupe had slipped from my head under father's hand, and in its place a life of exile began. After father abandoned me at the guru's doorstep, my life became a cage wrapped in strange colors and borrowed smiles. The guru's house was filled with others like me, some older, some younger, all carrying the same emptiness in their eyes. They dressed us in bright clothes, painted our faces, taught us how to clap in rhythm, how to sing with forced cheer, how to sway our bodies in dances meant to please others. It was supposed to be a new family, yet it felt like exile disguised in glitter. My name was changed to Alishah, and with that single act my past was stolen. The boy who once sought comfort in his mother's lap was erased, and in his place stood someone society would always mock, ridicule, or use. But no amount of training could sever the invisible thread that tied me to home. Again and again, whenever I found the slightest chance, I would run away. My feet carried me through the streets, past alleys and fields, until I reached the familiar corner of a house I never had the courage to knock. Father's words, "You are dead to us," still rang in my ears like a curse. So I lingered outside, hiding in shadows, watching the life I had once belonged to. From the cracks of the wooden door or the small gaps in the courtyard wall, I saw you, mother. You were busy kneading dough, shaping bread with those same hands that once healed my wounds. I watched as you served hot rotis to my brothers and sisters. Their laughter filled the air, their hands reached out for more, and you fed them with tenderness. My mouth watered, my stomach clenched in hunger. And I would silently open my lips as though your hand might reach me too, but the morsels never came. All I could do was swallow the lump in my throat and retreat. That hunger became a companion. Sometimes, to calm it, I would pick up a piece of stale bread discarded outside and soak it in my tears. Before eating, it tasted of salt and sorrow, but it was all I had. Eid came and went like a thief. I remembered how, even before my exile, my hands remained empty on that day. When father distributed money to everyone, my palms stayed bare. When he stroked their heads with affection, mine remained untouched. After I was cast out, Eids became lonelier still. The sound of laughter and bangles clinking from neighboring houses only deepened the silence around me. I would clutch my dupatta and imagine what it would feel like to once more sit at your feet, to hear you call me by the name you gave me at birth. Yet, instead of your call, it was society's cruelty that found me. Men who claimed honor and status came at night, dragging me to rooms where their desires drowned my protests. They stripped away my dignity, leaving behind wounds no eye could see. I was too small, too weak, too broken to fight. When pain overwhelmed me, I fainted, and in that darkness I was handed back to the guru like an object passed between hands. That was the beginning of another prison mother, a cycle of humiliation that repeated itself endlessly. I died and came back to life in my own eyes 1,000 times, carrying scars too heavy for a child's heart. After that night of betrayal, when my innocence was stolen by men who wore respectability as a mask, life never returned to what little safety it once had. The guru, instead of protecting me, turned my pain into profit. My body became a currency, my sorrow a performance. I was taught not just to sing and dance, but to sell pieces of myself to survive. Every clap, every sway of my hips, every forced smile was another chain tightening around me. They called it my fate, but but it felt more like a life sentence handed down without a trial. Many times I tried to escape. I would slip away in the dead of night, run barefoot across rough streets, searching for doors that might open to me. I knocked on shops, begged at houses, pleaded for work, any work that did not involve degrading myself. But each door closed before it fully opened. Some laughed at me, others spat at my feet, and some looked at me with pity that cut deeper than hatred. Again and again, hunger and exhaustion drove me back to the Guru's doorstep, the very place I wanted most to escape. It was a cruel circle, mother, one that taught me hope was dangerous. Society treated me as though I were a curse. People's words sliced through me sharper than knives. May your home never see a child like this. They would say to one another, using my existence as the worst kind of insult. Children mocked me in the streets, imitating my walk, my voice, my gestures, turning my pain into their entertainment. Men leered at me as though I were not human, but an object to be used and discarded. And yet, mother, when I cut myself, the blood that flowed was as red as theirs. My heart beat with the same rhythm, my lungs breathed the same air, my prayers rose to the same God. Then why was I punished? What was my crime? Was it because I was different, or because people's eyes were too blind to see me as human? Sometimes I thought perhaps my greatest sin was being born at all. I tried to hold on to faith, to believe that God, who made the stars and oceans, had never forgotten me, but when people who claimed to be his followers hurled stones of judgment, I began to wonder if even heaven had closed its gates. Sometimes they used religion as a weapon, quoting verses to condemn me, while using their power to exploit me behind closed doors. Hypocrisy became my constant witness. I lived with the feeling of dying every day, mother, dying to live. There were moments when I thought perhaps it would be better if I vanished, so the world could stop hating me and I could stop carrying the weight of their cruelty. But then I would remember your arms, your lap, your dupatta covering my wounds. That memory kept me breathing. It was the only reason I believed, however faintly, that I was once loved. I remember the first time a festival came after I had been thrown out, mother. The streets were alive with laughter. The scent of sweet dishes drifted from every home, and children ran about with new clothes, jingling bangles and henna-stained hands. I sat alone in the corner of a narrow alley, watching them, my stomach aching with hunger, my heart aching with something deeper. Do you know what I thought of then? I thought of our home, the sight of you rolling out dough, of father handing out crisp notes of ID to my brothers and sisters, of their smiles widening as their little hands filled with money. And me, mother, my hand always stayed empty. Even before I was cast out, on Eid I would stretch out my palm just like the others, but father's eyes would skip over me as if I did not exist. He would bless the others, kiss their foreheads, and their laughter would echo through the house. My heart would shrink each time, but I pretended not to mind. Now, sitting outside among strangers, with no home, no love, not even a single coin in my hand, I realized that those days of being ignored were still better than the complete emptiness I now carried. I often thought of father's bicycle. It stood in the courtyard like a monument to my loneliness. I would watch him from a distance as he pedaled down the street, his figure strong, his head held high, and my heart, foolish as it was, whispered the same prayer every time. Stop, just once, look at me. Hold me, but that prayer never reached his ears. The bicycle rolled on, carrying him away from me, leaving me with the unbroken silence of rejection. That small wish to be embraced just once became the most impossible dream of my life. As though being thrown out was not enough, life decided to deepen my wounds. Those men, those so-called Sharifa faces of society, dragged me away under the guise of respectability. Their eyes carried a hunger that terrified me. They stripped away what little dignity I had left and crushed me beneath the weight of their lust. Mother, I was too small, fragile to fight them. The pain broke me, my body gave way, my consciousness slipped. When I opened my eyes, I was back at the Guru's house. My shame returned to the place where it would be fed upon endlessly. And from that day forward, the cycle began, one I could never escape. Each time it happened, I felt myself die a little more inside. Each time I was forced to endure, a piece of me disappeared. I tried to tell myself I was strong, but deep down I knew I was just surviving, not living. Mother, I wanted to be your child again, to curl up in your lap and hear you whisper that I mattered, but all I had was the memory of your love and the cruel reality that society had already written my fate.